What we're going to be covering is a prescription for outrageous health. That sounds like a pretty bold statement. It sounds like a lot of hyperbole. It sounds like exaggeration. But if you stick with me for the full series of presentations, you'll walk away saying, this is a prescription for outrageous health. What I plan to cover over the next few days is the most powerful system known to man for preventing and reversing all chronic degenerative diseases. The most powerful system known to man. And if you stick with me, you'll be saying at the end also that this is the most powerful system. I will give you evidence. I'll show you how this works. And now, as you can see, a lot of you are looking at me and say, this isn't an 18-year-old pimply-faced guy who just walked out, read a pamphlet, and I'm going to give you a presentation on this. This is my second career. I worked in the business world for over 20 years before I changed careers, and I've been doing this for over 20 years. So I'm an old man. But I've been blessed with poor health, and if I didn't have that poor health, I wouldn't be involved in what I'm going to be talking to you about today. So I'm not telling you about this just from an academic standpoint, but from a personal standpoint as well. And I want to show you how you can be blessed with outrageous health, with the most powerful system known to man. I like starting with this presentation. Let food be your medicine. It is my foundational presentation. I'm going to show you a chart that I prayed on. I told you I worked in the business world. I worked with IBM for over 20 years. I was an executive with IBM. And one of the things that they teach you is net it out. And I remember I had to show you how old I am, when I started out in IBM, they had these transparencies that you would put in and project out. We didn't have any of this fancy stuff. They wired me up so much over here, I feel like the $1 million man. But when we started out, we had these transparencies. A lot of these guys, they said, what is this guy talking about? It was back in that last century, back in the 20th century. I know this is the 21st century. So that's when I started, and I remember Elise and I, we had all of these transparencies. We had hundreds of them. And I prayed, I said, God, help me to net this out. And what he impressed me with is one chart. With this one chart, and I'll show it to you. We're going to work up to it. You're going to help me to develop this chart. But with this one chart, I can speak for 20 minutes or for 20 hours. And this is the foundational presentation for everything. So for you that are here today and stick through the entire thing, you will have the foundational presentation that everything is based on. When we talk about cancer, when we talk about colds and flu, when we talk about hypertension, blood pressure, diabetes, all these different things, when we talk about the 10 commandments of natural health, when we talk about all of those things, this is the foundational presentation. So I like this one the most. Like I said, you guys are going to actually help me to develop this presentation. So this is what we're going to start out with, and I'm going to make another bold statement. In this presentation, I'm going to tell you everything you need to know about nutrition. So how can you make a statement like that? Well, let me give you some context. If you wanted to know about salvation, you can read Kant, you can read about all the philosophers out there, you can read about what the Hindus say, you can read what the Buddhists say, you can read about everything that everybody has to say. But all you have to do is read what this has to say, and you really have everything you need to know about salvation. And that's the spirit in which, and if you stick with me, you will see at the end of this presentation is all I really needed to understand. It takes a while, though, to kind of develop it and work it out. But my objective is to tell you, and you tell me, those of you who stick at the end with me through the entire presentation, tell me at the end if you needed to know anything more about nutrition than what I'm going to talk about today. It's not going to be the standard theories and things that you hear about at school. I'm not going to talk about diterpenoids and limonoids and carotenoids and a whole bunch of multisyllabic words that nobody understands. When I'm finished with this presentation, what you need is a third-grade education in common sense to understand everything you need to know about nutrition. Now, if I want to confuse you, I can use a lot of big words. You say, well, I don't have a clue of what that guy said. But it must be right. He must be smart because I don't understand anything he says. When you're finished with this presentation, this alone, you don't even have to stay with the rest of the days. I hope you do. And I'm from New York originally, so if I start talking fast, I have it all written in here. My basic principles of total health and my hierarchy of nutrients that we're going to talk about. And a couple of other books. They'll be available starting Sunday, and we'll have all kinds of handouts. But essentially, what I want you to do is help me to develop this so that you can walk away saying, by the time you finish, you'll be able to talk to anybody intelligently. Now, they have to have at least a third grade education. So if you have a second grade education, go back to school. Third grade education and common sense, you'll be able to talk to anybody intelligently and strongly and firmly and assertively. I have 3 doctorates and a PhD. You can have 15 doctorates. You'll be able to stand tall and say, no, this is the way nutrition works, and this is what I need. You'll be able to do that very confidently if you understand the very basic fundamental things that we're going to talk about tonight. So let's look at first what the essential requirements are that the body needs. Let's start with a really foundational principle. Anybody here dirty people? Okay, I'll come back to that. I'm going to say some things that sound a little strange, but stick with me. But these are the things that you need. These are the things that you have to give your body in order to survive. You need water, you need carbohydrates, you need amino acids, fatty acids, vitamins, minerals, enzymes. All those big words, if they don't have this, they don't have what you need in order to the body to function at its most optimum way, in the most profound way that was designed by God. Now, to do this, we're going to talk about the hierarchy of nutrients. And the hierarchy of nutrients there are a couple of principles. This is how you're going to help me develop it. The first principle in developing the hierarchy of nutrients, which is the most important nutrients to the least important nutrients. That's what we're going to do. The first principle is God wants us to thrive, not just survive. Thrive. Okay? The second principle is God gives us what we need most in the highest quantity. That's the kind of love. He doesn't hide it under a bushel. He gives us what we need in the highest quantity. The third principle is God gives us what we need in the easiest available form. Remember Naaman? He didn't want to go into the river that was appointed to him. He wanted to go to the Pharpar or one of these other beautiful rivers. But what we're going to talk about, God gives you what you need most in the easiest available form. He doesn't make it difficult for us to get. Okay, so that's that principle. And then the last and most important principle is, there's a great God that we serve. He gives us all that we need. Now, I hope you can help me. I'm going to make some statements. And unless you can refute those statements with this, I'm not going to pay you much attention. This is my final arbiter for what the truth is. So, when I say this, God gives us all we need, I didn't want to believe that. I don't want to believe this when I had poor health. I didn't want to believe it when I was studying naturopathy. I told you I have 3 doctorates. I had to keep studying until I finally got it, until God finally gave it to me. But one of the things that I found is, after he did everything that he did, he never called a committee, never called a staff meeting, not even of Moses or Abraham or Noah. He never called a group of people and said, help me to make it better. Or tell me what I'm missing, guys, for my people. He gives us all that we need. So now that we understand those principles, this is where you're going to help me to develop the hierarchy of nutrients. But let's understanding that, I gave it away already, didn't I? What's the first and most important principle? What's the first and most important nutrient? Now that I who's that smart person who said that? with the good eyesight. Now, I did this, now, abundantly supplied, easily available. What's the most easily available nutrient there is? It's so available that we even take it for granted, don't we? It is the first and most important nutrient. But, you know, we want to look at all other kinds of things. I did this in front of a Chinese audience once, and I had an interpreter. It was kind of interesting. I said, abundantly supplied and easily available. And somebody shouted out, rice. And I'm kind of right. It is abundantly supplied. But in terms of the most important nutrient, it's air. You can't live without air. What's the second most important nutrient using this formula? Who looked at my presentation? Boy, it's water. It's kind of interesting. You can live, how long can you live without air? Not more than 3 to 5 minutes. Now you can live without water a little bit longer. But let's look at something very interesting. When God created us, if you notice, when you look at Genesis, the last thing in his creation was man, wasn't it? He created all this stuff for us before he created us. He created the heavens first. And then the waters is the next thing the Bible talks about. Right? He separated the waters from above and the waters below. And what is the planet? What's the percentage of water on this planet? Somebody said 75. 75. Do I hear higher? 80. Okay, so somebody is really drowning. Okay. 65. Okay, the earth, you look at the planet, is 70 to 75% water. What is the body? 70 to 75%. It's the exact template of the earth. What's the third most important nutrient? It's close. So abundantly supplied and easily available. It's easy to take it for granted, isn't it? But you can live without sunlight for a little while, can't you? For days. Some people do. We live in basements or we're in offices. Sometimes, especially where I'm from in the States, the only sunlight you might get is in between running out of your car after you got to your destination, running back to the car. You don't even get sunlight to get into the car. In a lot of places, you go right to the garage. But you can live without sunlight for a while, for days, for months. You can live without water for 20, 30 days. You can't live without air for 3 to 5 minutes. Abundantly supplied, this is the hierarchy. They're so abundantly supplied and easily available, we tend to take these for granted. And I know some of you are saying, boy, I'm glad I ate dinner already because this guy isn't giving me anything to work these teeth on. What am I going to eat with this guy? Now there's 5 food groups. This is the first food group. This guy isn't feeding me. I'm going to look worse than him listening to this guy. But I have one more nutrient in this first food group. And what's that last final nutrient in this first food group? Again, what are the principles? Abundantly supplied, immediately available. God provides all that we need. The rest is not so abundantly supplied. Not so easily available. Who said that? What did you say? Did you say earth? That's close. I thought you said earth. Okay, the lady with the good eyes. Close enough for government work. It's earth. We're not on Mars. We're not on Venus. We're not on the moon. He put us on this earth. I asked a question earlier. I'm going to come back to it. How many of us are dirty people? Who's not dirty? Okay. All right, let's start getting something that we can actually sink our teeth into. Okay? We're going to go into the second food group. What's the first thing that you can start sinking your teeth in? And there doesn't look like a whole lot of Chinese people. Don't tell me rice. Already? Okay. Somebody raise a hand. Anybody got a hand? Fruits and vegetables over here. Nuts and grains over here. Anybody else? Okay. Leaves. The leaves of the trees are for the healing of the planet. Biblical, we got a lot of biblically based people in. I must be around a bunch of biblically based people around here today. Okay, let me tell you what this is. Then I'm going to ask a question. Okay, we talked about Earth, right? Right? So we got that picture. We got the whole picture. Who does the prize go to? Who said fruit? Fruit. What's the most abundantly supplied and most easily available food on this planet? Is fruit. Let me tell you why fruit is so important. I asked you earlier, who here are dirty people? What are we made of? Oh, he took the dust of the earth and formed it together and he breathed. We're all dirt. We're from dirt. Now, fruit can do something that we can't do. We can't eat dirt. Some of us try to. But let me tell you what's so powerful about fruit, why that's the first and most important food we should eat. It's so powerful, so abundantly supplied and easily available, we don't even consider it a food. We might look at it as a dessert. But it's so powerful that fruit is a cocktail of air, water, sunlight, and what the earth provides. Nothing provides that first food group better than fruit. It's so powerful that the whole hierarchy of nutrients is based on how well it provides and helps us assimilate and use air, water, sunlight, and the earth. Let's break that down. Where does all the air come from? Is there somebody out in Venus with a big fan pumping air down here? He was right when he talked about leaves. All of our oxygen comes from the leaves of the trees for the healing. See, when it says from plants, all plants, that's what puts out oxygen. What do plants take in to form their structure and their constitution? Carbon dioxide. It's a perfectly synergistic relationship. We breathe out all this carbon dioxide they don't need, and they get big and strong and gives us the oxygen we need. All the air on the planet comes from the plants. So you were right. Okay? The reason why I ask these questions is because a lot of times you don't realize how smart you are. You wait until somebody starts telling you about carotenoids and liminoids and superoxide dismutase and all kinds of things that you can put in a capsule. But God already provided that capsule for you. One of the things that you note about fruit, it's the highest water content food known to man. All fruit, what? Over 75% water. Okay. And the sunlight, when it hits that whole complex, the sun's energy is locked in every seed. So if you want to internalize air, water, and sunlight, you want fruit. And fruit can do something you can't do. It can eat dirt. It takes its roots and digs way down there, that deep dirt, and pulls all that stuff that we were originally made of, all those vitamins, minerals, phytonutrients, and everything, and locks it in that fruit. Fruit is the most powerful food known to man. It's no wonder. When God went through and he said this and he said that, and he came all the way down to Genesis 1:29, after man was created, after the air, water, the sunlight, and all this, then he took man and formed him, and he said, I'm going to make you of this dirt, and if you stay dirty with me, and if you keep eating all this dirt, and this cocktail that I'm giving you in Genesis 1:29, all seed-bearing plants. Now, he didn't give any proof text. He didn't call a committee to ask if it was okay. But that was it. That's how powerful God is and how powerful fruit is. Now, somebody said vegetables. That was very good, because that is actually second. And then you said nuts and seeds. So that's second. This is the ideal diet. So all of the basic nutrients that you can't live without. Can anybody here figure out how you can live without air, water, sunlight, and what the earth provides? Nobody can. Those are your basic needs. But I don't see anybody making their own air, making their own water, developing their own sunlight, although we try to put it in the capsule, don't we? And making their own nutrients. It's all in the earth. The way the hierarchy of nutrients work is based on how well it makes available air, water, sunlight, and the earth's nutrients. So you say, well, vegetables sound pretty good, but the thing about vegetables, it has fiber, and if you look at it, that came in Genesis 1:30. That was for the animals, mostly. They don't need the brain fiber. We're going to talk about the brain tomorrow. We're going to have a lot of fun. Talk about the functional integrity of the frontal lobe. But it doesn't have as much water. It's high water content, 50, 60, 70, but it's not as high as water content as fruit. Fruit can be over 90% water. And if you don't believe me, ask Mr. Watermelon Man. Yeah. But even apples, all the fruit, grapes, they're well over 80%. We'll have all the water that you need. And as you go down, nuts and seeds, they're very high in integrity, but it doesn't have as much water. It has a little bit of water. But let me show you how brilliant God was. As you really study this and break it down to its elemental, you really appreciate what a great God it is that we serve. You're gonna learn a few things. You're gonna learn how fearfully and powerfully we made. We're so fearfully and powerfully made that we have to go through a lot of effort to go against God's will. And He's still, even today, after all these generations, we're still surviving. As a matter of fact, my favorite author outside the Bible says, if our original parents, Adam and Eve, didn't have 20 times more energy than we do, and sustenance, we would be extinct as a species. That's how powerful God. We had to work hard to get to the state that we are in today. But the good news is I'm going to show you how we can start working our way back. But let me tell you, we're talking about the brilliance of God. Now, all the nuts and seeds are botanically what? They're a fruit. But it's a fruit of what? Seed-bearing plants. It's a fruit with a hard covering, as opposed to fruit with a soft covering. It's so hard. And let me tell you, remember we talking about abundantly supplied and easily available? Nuts aren't that easily available. And some, especially the hard shell. As a matter of fact, some of the real hard shell ones like the macadamia nuts and the pecans, you break it, you need to get a couple of rocks. So think in the beginning of time, where we didn't have nut crackers and all these modern conveniences. As a matter of fact, it's so powerful that all you had to do was sit down in the garden and an apple will fall on your head and say, boom, it's lunchtime. That's how abundantly supplied and easily available it was. When you went after, you'd have to go and grab and pull that leaf. It's not going to fall into your hand. The fruit will fall right into your hand. The nuts and seeds, you had to get a couple of rocks to break them. And so, after you broke 7 or 8 of them, you say, I'm tired. I'm working too hard. It's not as easily available. Abundantly supplied, easy. Remember those principles? Remember these principles. Powerful. And then as you start to go through, I can go through fairly quickly now because I've already established the premise. See, a lot of people's diet are based on grains and legumes. As a matter of fact, if you look at the USDA chart, they tell you that the basis of that should be grains. What's the problem with grains? It's not high water content. It's a very dehydrated food. And you can't eat a lot of it. You got to cook it, you got to break it down, you got to break down the cellulose so you can actually absorb and utilize it. So it's not it's abundantly supplied from the standpoint you can grow it anywhere on the continent, but it's not easily available to feed you. And it doesn't contain those basic nutrients like fruits, vegetables, nuts, and seeds. And it's much easier to hybridize and genetically modify them, and there's all kinds of problems with grains. Grains are a problem. As we go through, we'll talk about gluten intolerance and all those kind of things. Not because of what God did, okay? But grains. Now, legumes. A lot of people think beans are so important. One of the things that you will learn is how we are chasing after certain nutrients foolishly. I'm going to say another statement. And prove me wrong. Prove me wrong by science, but come to here first. And final analysis. Beans are one of the worst things that you can eat. And Seventh-day Adventists in particular, I see themselves beaning themselves to the promised land. They're just going to jettison off. Because beans have a hemicellulose covering that you don't have an enzyme to break down. And so I see a lot of good brothers and sisters in the health message beaning themselves with gas, bloating, and all kinds of things, and they're just going to just take off one day. And what I'm here to do is tell you, you know, I did this presentation to a group, and there was this short, heavy-set young lady. And you see, I talk a lot, and I'm happy to talk about presentation. I happened to be at one of the health institutes, and I started the first day, and I started talking about all this problem about the diet, this, that, and the other thing. And I noticed she was following me around, and I know she didn't like me. She never talked to me or anything. But at the end of the thing, at the end of the 19 days, she came over and thanked me. Said, you know, I listened to you, and I did this hierarchy of nutrition, this thing that you were talking about. I lost 12 pounds. I never felt better in my life, and I was eating all this stuff because I wanted to be a good Christian. And those good Christians would tell me this is what I need to be doing. I need to be getting all these grains and beans and everything. She was killing herself. She happened to be from Santo Domingo, you know, where they didn't have all these beans. So even gastrointestinal, she just couldn't handle it. So a lot of us are unwittingly falling into dietary practices that some expert talked about that has nothing to do with reality. So that's what we're going to talk about. And you're going to see now, I didn't even start talking about how this is related to disease. I'm just talking about physiologically and how we're designed. So the rest is fairly easy once you have that. But it can be a part of a good diet if prepared properly. And now we start and get down to the worst, to the next category, which is your flesh foods and your dairy foods. A lot of people think you need this. We're going to talk a lot about that, so I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time here about that. But that's part of a poor diet. And then the last, what's the last food group? Somebody with good eyes saw it already. What's that? Processed foods. Processed refined foods. That's food group number 5. Now, let me put this in context. Part of the worst diet. The interesting thing about the first 4 is God had something to do with it. God had nothing to do with this last category. This is all man-made. Okay? And that's part of the problem. So now that you have the hierarchy of nutrition, let's put in some kind of a context. Okay? So at the bottom you see perfect health on one end of the continuum and advanced illness on the other end of the continuum. Can you see that? So perfect health related to eating on this part, good health kind of over here, and then the chronic conditions actually starts with the grains and the legumes. We're going to explore this a little further. And then advanced illness. So let's put it into a little further context. We talked about the 7 requirements: water, carbohydrates, amino acids, fatty acids, vitamins, minerals, enzymes. I hope you appreciate now how powerful that is. Let's put this into further context. If you listen to the experts. Now, a lot of people think that nutrition and science, even modern medicine, how long do you think modern medicine has been around? How many people, when do you think it started? A long time? 200, 300? 2000 BC? Do I have any? What's that? Modern medicine. 250 BC, you said? 250 AD or BC? Okay, BC. Okay, modern medicine actually started around the 1940s. Right. Well, World War I is when it really started. And then, you know, you couldn't be doing natural things. You couldn't be in a foxhole waiting for your sneezing. And you get shot by the guy next to you. You won't have to wait for the enemy. So you couldn't take the full amount of time to get well. You needed to stop that sneezing and that cough right away. So modern medicine really came in World War I. World War II is when it really took off. And if you study modern medicine, really in the 1800s, mid-1800s. But we'll go to that. But the point is, from a nutrition standpoint, I'm talking about medicine in general. People knew nothing about this stuff 200 years ago is my point. It's 150 years ago that at the beginning of the 20th century, that water, carbohydrates, these things that were talked about, that they were discovered. And then you got all of these famous people that things were named after. And they said, well, if you got enough lemon, you get rid of scurvy. And if you took your B vitamins, you wouldn't get beriberi and diseases and things of that nature. But it wasn't until the 1960s that different foods and components, including the 22 amino acids, that's when that was discovered. And the vitamins, minerals, that started back in 1913. Before that, nobody knew what a vitamin or mineral was. As a matter of fact, it's so interesting when you start studying nutrition now, you look at the textbooks, things that we thought were vitamins really function like minerals. And things that we call minerals are really vitamins. And then after a while, they got to be so numerous that they started coming up with all kinds of things. By the time you got to the 1980s, hundreds of new components. And phytochemicals, phytonutraceuticals, all kinds of big multisyllabic words, and just confusing the daylights. And resveratrol. And then, not they give you these big names to intimidate you, then you have to get it from wine. They don't tell you that the resveratrol, the best source of it is the grape. You don't need the wine. You lost the water content, you dehydrated yourself with wine, and on and on and on. So, this is a relatively new industry. What are they going to come up with in the 21st century? And when are we going to start going back to the first century? Back to when God started the whole story. Made it real simple for us. So we're chasing after all of these things, and as you start to see, you're starting to realize you know more than you realize you know. Biblical perspective, speaking of foods that give health and healing, the Bible tells us we were originally given seed-bearing plants. And as you said, the leaves of the trees were for the healing of the planet. So we needed that. The tree will bear its fruit every month. How many months are there in a year? How many systems are there in the body? 12. It's interesting when you start looking at how God does things and looks at God's numbers and his connections. All these things. As a matter of fact, your brain will explode. We're gonna talk about the brain tomorrow. Anybody want an exploding brain? Listen to tomorrow's sermon. But then the fruit will serve as the food, and the leaves are for the healing of the planet. So those vegetables, those vegetation, that's where the healing foods are. You didn't need it before sin because nobody was dying. Nobody was getting sick. After the fall, you needed medicine. So you needed those leaves. You didn't need it before then. You just needed all the fruit. Very powerful. I like the way my favorite author outside the Bible says it in fruit, vegetables, nuts, seeds. She has grains in here, and there's a reason for that. We'll explore this a little bit further. But you notice it's at the end of the list, not the beginning of the list, and there are reasons for that. It has to do with culture and economics and things of that nature. And it has to do with what has happened after the fall. But they impart a strength, a power of endurance, a vigor of intellect that are not afforded by a more complex and stimulating diet. You don't need beans. You don't need beans and rice. You don't need ketchup on it. You don't need pork rinds in it. You don't need any of that other stuff. So, let's kind of put this in perspective. First 10 generations of man, what was their average lifespan? Over 900 years. After the flood, after Noah, the next 10 generations went down to 70. What does the Psalm say? Man is given 70. And if you're fortunate, you get 10 more. Most people don't live past 70 to 80. And those that are over 80, they have compromised, they got something wrong. But we weren't designed like that. It doesn't have to be that way. Well, ask Moses. Moses was 120. And they said that when he went, he walked to his grave. He climbed the mountain. They said he was strong of eye. He didn't have to wear any glasses. And he was strong of limb. I want to be like Moses. I want to grow up to be like Moses. I think Wanda said I joined the Senior Olympics last year. I work with world-class athletes as well as sick people. And I'm saying, well, this is pretty good. I'm seeing this. I said, well, why don't I try it on myself? And I just started doing it. And you have to be old, first of all. Most of you guys won't qualify. You have to be over 50. So you young folks, you can look at my website, International Institute, and you can see me running crazy. I know that crazy guy. And so I do the high jump, long jump, triple jump. Now, most people, by the time they get my age, they can barely walk to the track. And running full speed and jumping like a fool, my kids think I lost my mind. They're right, but not for the reasons they think. But it really can give you back your health. And I can tell you, I'm almost 70. As a matter of fact, I have a year and a half, and my objective is to be #1 in the country in a few of the events that I'm in. My real objective, and people laugh when I say this, I want to break the world's record for the shot put at the age of 100. Usually when I say this, usually a heavy-set person in the back says, "You're too skinny." And what I say to them, and the thing is, how many heavy 100-year-olds do you know? And I can tell you from my personal experience, the biggest thing about me going to a lot of my events is showing up at the park with all my faculties and being able to move. Some of these guys, they're all strapped up and wounded and wound up. I said, what are you doing? And it happened to me because I got a little hasty. And I got hurt when I first came out. And I said, why am I doing this? I have the ability. I know how to, and now because I eat right now, I was able to recover well. And now I'm thinking, and you start thinking, you can actually, and the point I'm trying to make is in your 60s, you can have the biological integrity of somebody in their 30s. Now I can tell you, and I'm not to point at myself, but a lot of my clients, I'm a doctor's worst nightmare. An aspirin will die of loneliness in my medicine cabinet. There's nothing they can do for me. They hate me. As a matter of fact, they ask me, how did I, when you get older, your blood pressure automatically goes up, according to medically people. As a matter of fact, by the time you're 40, you should be 140/90. We'll talk about that. Mine, when I was 55, I got insurance. I'm an old man with young kids. I know you feel sorry for me. Any of you, is it Sabbath yet? Okay, I can talk about it real quick. I got about 2 minutes before Sunday. Buy my book. Buy my books. I'm an old man with young. I have my grandchildren are older than the 2 kids you're going to meet tomorrow. I'm happy to report to you my great-grandchildren are younger than my 2 youngest biological children. So, I know you feel, this guy's too old to be doing this. So if you want to help me to get them through school and help me to make my objectives in the Senior Olympics, help me by buying my books Sunday. And the other reason about the books is, if I went through this too quickly, I talk about the hierarchy of nutrients, and I talk about all of the things that we're going to be talking about in the next 10 days in this Basic Principles book. So it helps that. It'll help you with that quite a bit. So how do we make this transition now that we understand these hierarchy of nutrients? I'm just going to go through 10 practical considerations today, and we're going to talk about a lot more over the next few days and be very, very focused and intentional for specific issues, health issues. But let's talk about 10 considerations. And I like to break this up into a couple of groups. One of the handouts you're going to get is a nice handout that Wander has. It's 2 pages, and it has all the dietary principles on one 2-sided page. It has a lot of the things that we talked about today and over the next few days on that 2-sided page. And I talk about 2 types of eating. First is eating the right things. That's what we talked about today. We may get a chance to talk about the other part, but eating whole foods only is the principle. What does that mean? Anything that doesn't come in a box, can, or bottle. Whole foods. Potatoes, not potato chips. Corn, not popcorn. Okay, less sugary dairy and flesh foods. Eat no diet foods. Eat healthy snacks. And we're going to talk about all these in more detail. Eat a large salad before going out. You know, we need to be very respectful when we go, especially to some of these potlucks. It's amazing. The people are coming, Dr. Sharp, what do you think? And I look at this thing, I said, wow, that must be your food. But the trick is, and you got to be respectful, and you'll see if there, I don't know if there's going to be a potluck, but if there is, you're going to see, I don't know why people, when I walk by, they're hiding their, you know, we're called to be witnesses, not judges or lawyers. I'm here to I'm a messenger. I have some of the same issues. I do the same praying that you pray for to get the victory over this. But let me tell you the trick that I use when I go visiting or even going to a restaurant. You know, the family comes into town. The trick is eat a large salad. Because it satisfies, and then you're not like a ravenous dog when you get there to eat anything they put in front of you. And you can then carefully make the best choices of the options available. We're going to talk about this a little bit more when we talk about the brain. And then the other side of this is eating right, which a lot of people, you can eat, if you eat the good foods wrongly, you're going to have bad results. So this is the other side of the coin. I just want to give you just a little sneak preview at that. You know, we need water, but one of the biggest mistakes we make is drinking the water with meals. It dilutes the enzymes, and what's the worst thing to put in your body? Cold water. Why is that? We're 98 degrees.
Because your body is warm.
It's 98 degrees, so if you put in something that's 50 degrees, the body has to stop, suspend all digestion, so you don't die of hypothermia. To warm that up. So a meal that'll normally take maybe 1, 2, 3 hours, it might take 6, 7 hours. Because the body has to, and then you get all of the putrefaction and fermentation, all this fun stuff that we're going to talk about in the next few days, as a result of not eating right. Allow 4 to 6 hours between meals. Don't eat late at night. Most people eat their biggest meal late at night. So all of these things, proper food combining. And then learn and apply God's natural health laws. This is how we eat right. And you know, not everything we need is in here. But you know, the proof text of that is in my favorite author. She wrote all about this stuff in magnificent detail. So a lot of you read, as a matter of fact, that's how I became a Seventh-day Adventist. That's how I became a Christian. Arguing or finding out that there was this group of people that was talking like I was talking. As a matter of fact, what I didn't tell, well, you said you're going to talk about my background next few days. Stick around. You'll find out some interesting things. But it was in that process of arguing with people and finding out and arguing with Seventh-day Adventists. See, two things you don't argue with, well, one thing in particular. There's two legacies Seventh-day Adventists were given. One is a real understanding and appreciation for pure, unadulterated biblical truth. And sticking to it no matter what goes. As a matter of fact, I was a very secular guy, but a pretty smart guy. God blessed me with a good brain. I graduated #1 in elementary school, etc., and got a retroactive scholarship in high school. So I had a pretty good brain. I used to argue with Christians. Now, I was raised a Catholic. I was in the seminary for 2 years, and I left for 30 years. And I studied all these philosophies, etc., including Buddhism, Hinduism, Taoism. I almost became a Taoist. But when you argue with Seventh-day Adventists about the Bible, if you argue with Lutherans, they say, wow, that guy's, they used to tell me, boy, you're smart. Oh, what I didn't tell you is I represented my school in the National Spelling Bee and in the National Catechism Contest. So I thought I knew everything about the Bible. So I argued with Christians. They said, wow, I never thought of that. Until nothing, most of the stuff I was making up, sort of. But you say that to a Seventh-day Adventist, yeah, well, I can't place where that is. Where is that again? I said, whoa. I said, oh. And I go into my index and everything. I said, well, these guys know something. But then when it came to food, the second thing that the Seventh-day Adventists was the health message. I almost became a Christian Scientist because I was interested in health. The only reason I didn't become a Taoist is because God knew I was looking for truth. He snatched me from the jaws of defeat. And it was arguing with Seventh-day Adventists about health principles, and then they said, Oh, but we also follow the spirit of prophecy. Once they couldn't argue with me scientifically and logically. I said, what are you talking about? I'm having an intelligent conversation with you. What is this? What is that? I said, why do you want to do that? Why can't we talk like two human beings? And so, and I said, what is this? And they mentioned this Ellen White. I said, I know Deepak Chopra. And I've met Mantak Chia and all of these great. I said, who is that? I never heard of her. Heard of all these other greats. I said, which is kind of stupid. It's like arguing with Seventh-day Adventists about the Bible. I said, what did she write? Did she write anything? So they gave me these two books. Counsels on Diets and Foods, Counsel and Ministry of Healing. I went and I read that 6 weeks later. I said, she's right, you guys are wrong. It's two fundamental mistakes. And if you stick with me, I'll tell you what they are. Or you can ask me in the question. But they're so fundamental and basic that if I tell you, they don't have a clue of what they're talking about. But a lot of Seventh-day Adventists have no clue. When I became a Seventh-day Adventist, this is kind of interesting. I was baptized in 1993. As a matter of fact, another quick short story, if you don't mind. Okay, I got a little bit of daylight left. She was a Seventh-day Adventist. As a matter of fact, when I married her, we got married in '89. They kicked her out. They said, you marrying that heathen? And they disfellowshipped her. Now we got married, and it was after that I really started studying this, and then I found out about the health message, etc. In 1993, I got baptized, and the standing joke in my family is, I made you a Seventh-day Adventist. A heathen! So if God can take a heathen like me and make me a Seventh-day Adventist, you guys have a lot of hope. See, you guys don't know me. But anyhow, the point is, I read that, we have this, and there are people making money, lots of money off of our message. And I'm not going to use any names because I like these people. I know some of these people. I've looked in the whites of their eyes, and they're going to these Adventist communities, and they're making all this money. And it's our message. But anyhow, let me kind of wrap up before the Sabbath closes. The hierarchy of nutrients, and this is the power of it. There are 4 levels of health. There's abundant health, dynamic vitality. These are people that you hate. Okay? They never get sick. They drink and they do this and they live a long time and everything. But only a handful of people fit in this category. What percentage of the people do you think fit in this category of dynamic vitality? Good mind, long life? 15. I heard 15. Okay, there's less than 5% of people fit in this category. Optimum health, what percentage do you think fit in that category? Somebody, whoever said 15, that's about 15 to 20%. That was the people that are actually, and they're not necessarily Christians. There are those Buddhists and Hindus and Taoists and all those people that I was studying. They're eating. You know, did you know that most of the world, over 2/3 of the world, are vegetarians? And over 2/3 of the United States, this is Bermuda. I don't know what it is in Bermuda. But it's 70-80%. People think you need that. We're going to be talking about that. But 70-80% fit in that. What percentage do you think fit in that? What percentage do you think fit in this group? 70 to 75%. Everybody from acne, AIDS, to zits, and everything in between. All those things that people are going to doctors for. And the interesting thing is, in this group here, as you can see, is debilitating illness is less than 5%. These are the interesting thing about these presentations. There's advanced degeneration, etc. This group is the only group that can get any real value from modern medicine. But it's turned upside down. It's 95% of the people that are going to modern medicine for their issues, and only 5% that are practicing God's law. And they're not Seventh-day Adventists. There's not enough Seventh-day Adventists in the world. So we're going to explore this, and remember I said, a prescription for outrageous health. I'm going to show you talk about the most powerful system known to man. Stick with me. This is the foundation of that, and we're going to explore it and go a little bit further. Now, what's the purpose of this chart? This is the one chart that I talked about. And literally, I can take this chart, and as you can see, I can talk about air, water. I don't, you don't have all the pretty stuff, but I can talk about this for 20 minutes. Sometimes I do a 2-minute summary, and I dare you to challenge me to not be able to talk about this for 20 hours. Every presentation I'm going to be talking for about 10 to 20 hours of presentations during this period of time, and question and answer. I keep coming back to this. By the time I finish, I'm saying, if you stick with me, you're going to boldly walk down the streets of Bermuda. Make sure you drive on the correct side of the street. I said yesterday at the airport, I said, but you guys are on the wrong side. It was Nelson. I said, why do you drive on the wrong side of the street? And he said, no, we're on the other side of the street. He was very nice. He's a good Christian man. He didn't say, no, you guys are wrong, we're right. No, it's the other side. So if you stick with me, you'll see that everything is kind of based off of this. Understanding these foundational principles. And let me tell you what the trick is. The trick is, even if you're down here, your head down. Now, a lot of these people in this group, they're scratching their head. They're trying to figure out what's going on wrong with them. And they go to the doctor's got longer nails. They're scratching their head even twice as much. And sometimes I wonder, why don't people listen to them? You ask them, what is the cause of this? They don't know. Yet you'll take whatever he pulls out of his drawer and gives you, whatever blade, you just sit there and stand tall and let them hack. And yet you're going to find out by properly using these principles, you can cure every chronic degenerative disease. I'm not talking about trauma. And we're going to have a really nice presentation when we talk about what are the real 7 basic issues that we deal with. And what's the difference between conventional and natural medicine? And what's the strengths and the weaknesses of both? There's a real powerful strength and there are some weaknesses in both. And so we'll talk about that later. But the point of this is, no matter where you are, confused, weak, if based on your requirements and capacities. Now, I was blessed with poor health, so I wasn't in this group doing all the craziest. I thought that pizza was a health food. Had fats, protein, carbohydrates, grains. I mean, I was nasal, I couldn't talk. So much asthma and congestion. But here I was, listening to all these experts. So I was in there. So I was down here, literally. Had all kinds of skin problems and allergies and etc. But no matter where you are, if you chip away based on your requirements and capacities. Now, if you're up in this area already, please don't race against me because you're going to destroy me if you follow these principles. It's just going to make you even better. And you know, the most important thing about this chart is even if it made you worse, if God told you to do it, you should do it because he has your best interests in mind. But it only makes you better based on your requirements and capacities. If you start working your way up the chart, as far up as you need to be, that means for some 10 to 20% of this in your diet, so be it. For me, it had to be at least 60 to 70%. And when it's 80 to 90%, the healthiest I've ever been in my life was when I went on a 100% raw food diet, eating nothing but this. I remember when I was 59, and I wanted to be on the healthiest I've ever been. As a matter of fact, my wife hated me because we were buying these big things of bananas and making deals with the wholesalers and apples, and I didn't. And boy, you don't the smoothies, all kinds of food all over the place. And so she had to have the regular meals for the kids and everybody, and then these, and then this. But I did 100%. It was the healthiest I've ever been in my life. Now you asked me the question, why didn't I stick with it? Why didn't I? Stick around tomorrow when we talk about the frontal lobe of the brain. And you'll be able to tell me. Like I said, you know, I'm not ready for translation. I'm a messenger. I'm not an angel. But the message is pure. I said, don't argue with me for being perfect. Argue for being a perfect messenger. Okay? Tell me if I'm not true to this or the spirit of prophecy. Don't look at my plate and say, you made a mistake. I saw that grain. I saw you eat that sandwich. That's bread. Now, what is bread? Where's bread fit in this? Right. I look for the bread bush. I can't find it. Not even the 100% grain bush. So, and you know, the thing is, you know, we get kind of cocky when we get better. When I was real sick, I was real obedient. As soon as we start getting well, we start taking little liberties here and there. Can anybody, am I the only one like that? Oh, okay. Like I said, when I'm 60 to 70%, I'm doing real well. As a matter of fact, I told you I got a year and a half. Actually, it was a little less than a year and a half before I'm 70. My 69th year, you don't want to, my wife is going to move out. She said, I don't want to be around this guy because he's crazy. Once he makes it, I'm going to get up to the higher level because I literally want to, I have certain objectives. What does that have to do with salvation? I don't have a clue. But that's one of my hobbies. I'm having a good old time doing it. And so I have a lot of, but the point is, based on your requirements and capacities, but understand this, and the higher you are up on the chart, you know, I did this presentation about 18 years ago to a group of, you know, California's a strange group. But there was a group of people, I thought they were heckling and jekyling me in the back, but after the presentation, that's the best presentation I ever saw. Because they whispering back and forth, you remember. You know what, they were breatharians. You know what breatharians believe? They believe that you can get all your nutrients out of the air. You can get your water, and I talked about the ideal diet, and I talked about fasting. And I put in that context, and when you fast, how the stomach shrinks, and it turns into a single line, and you can start getting your nutrients out of the air because your body works much more efficiently. The interesting thing about the more efficient your body is, the less calories you need. See this mythical 2,000 calorie thing? And people eating 4,000 or 5,000 calories? And sometimes you need a lot more calories, especially as you lower down on this, because they're so empty. Well, actually, we're going to talk a little bit about that tonight. But the point is, based on your requirements and capacity, you can work your way up to there. And you will win the shot put at the age of 100. Because all you have to do is show up at the park. And if it drops, and I know the record, incidentally. I know the guy. It's 13 feet something. So I know where I am now. As a matter of fact, I started building up and everything. I got up to well over 20 feet. I said, oh, okay, if I can maintain this for another 30-something years. So you can have fun with this. So, anyhow, in summary, a diet of fruits, vegetables, nuts, seeds, and selected grains. You notice I said selected. We'll come back to that. What's the worst grain you can put in your body? Boys, that's smart. We got all the smart people in the front row. People with the good eyes and the brain. You're right. It's the worst food you can put in your body. Selected grains. Kamut, amaranth, quinoa, and you said it right. It's not quinoa. Quinoa. Okay. The best sources of nutrient requirements. Excess dairy, protein, sugar should be avoided as much as practical. We're going to have a lot of fun with this. And the highest development of human faculty for God's purpose. So even if it wasn't the best, if God told you to do it, He has a reason. And if you got sick from doing it, it's because He needs to break you down to build you up again. And you get all kinds of excuses. But that's the summary. So, as I said, what Elisa and I have, we have a series of some 30-plus presentations. We can't do them all. The ones that I have highlighted are some of the ones that we're going to focus on, like 21st century health evangelism and prescription for good health, alternative versus conventional medicine, as we talked about, strategies for making health transition, the prescription for colds and flu, fast. We're going to have a lot of fun with this. You're really going to be empowered after listening to the cancer and vascular presentation. And I have to confess to you, I shouldn't make that confession. You might not come back to any of the other presentations. We can talk about children's health issues tomorrow. Children are precious commodities. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about the frontal lobe tomorrow. But the point is, there's a lot of presentations here. I have a plan. We already planned what we want to talk about. But guess what? You're in charge, not me. So based on your questions and your comments, and if there's some things that are on your mind, please get that somehow to Lisa. We're going to have handouts, all kinds of handouts. We're going to have a sign-up list, and get a note to us. I will change that presentation that I have planned. Okay? Yeah, whatever, you put that, and if I need to, if I can't work it into what I have designed already, I will do a whole new presentation based on what I get from you. And I've done this in the past. Because I'm really not in charge. He is. And if I do this right, I will be your servant and not vice versa. So I'm here to serve you. Okay? So that's why I put this up here, to give you an idea. So with that, me and my lovely bride, we'd like to wish you health, happiness, and God's richest blessings as you pursue your health goals. And this is the most important. He's the master healer. I'm trying to be a master servant. I'm a basic. Anybody know karate? I took karate too. You know the belts, white belt up. I might be like a pale green belt. I'm working my way. I'm not a 9th degree black belt by any means, but I'm working at it. But he's in charge. And so whether you eat or drink or whatever you do, let's make sure we're doing it for the glory of God. We're not doing it just so that we can win the shot put for people over 100. Just so that we can have these, so we can look like, where's that pastor? I told, he'd make a great hurdler. And he's so young that he'd break all records if he started now. He's so young, but by the time he's 50, he'll be breaking it. Records all the time. And a lot of you guys tell us, I see this young, all you young people, look at this young lady over here. Beautiful people.
Thank you.
You know? So, yes. So make sure you're doing it for the right reason, though. And I keep telling myself I can have a track and field ministry. So, you know, you can run. Oh, yeah. But, you know, you can have fun in life is the point. But whatever you do, whatever the events you're doing, whatever eating you're doing, let's not do it so that we can judge others, so that we can be superior to others. But in the final analysis, let's make sure we're doing it so that we can give all of the honor and glory to Him. Now, the way this works is there's questions and answers. We're really going to do questions and answers in a big way starting Sunday because, you know, the Sabbath, I like to kind of keep it, as you see, I like to have fun. I can't be as jocular as I want to on the Sabbath. I really try to be respectful. You see, I dress up in my best bib and tucker, try to wash behind my ears and everything. So, but we will be answering all your questions. And I want to know what your questions are. And following the presentation, we will dissect this hierarchy of nutrients more and more. So submit your questions. And then if you want to get, I joked about, well, it wasn't really a joke, I was kind of serious. Buy them, but you can get it for free. The hierarchy of nutrients is free on our website, www.IOM online. We have a school where you can become a certified nutrition counselor, a certified herbalist, certified medical missionary, a bachelor's, master's, a doctorate. And we have a lot of free articles. Matter of fact, our objective is to have an e-lifestyle center so that you can go to the website and learn all kinds of things. We already have all kinds of home remedies from the Uchi Pines, for example, on there, and a whole lot of other presentations that we want to have on there. We'll teach you how to do poultices and a lot of the things that we're talking about, a lot of the natural health things. So a lot of that is going to be free anyway. So if you're like me and you like to squeeze the nickel till the buffalo screams and you don't want to spend a dime, it's free. It's free in here. It's free in the spirit of prophecy. And it's not mine. It's His. So, and if there's something on there that's not on there that should be on there, tell me. Because I want us to have a premier educational facility for everybody. And the objective is, but you know, some people like the nice hardcover. And the thing is that what you can't have by getting it free is you can't see my smiling face on the back cover here. So if that's important. And you know, some people like to flip through, and there's nice pictures in here, and there's color, and this one in particular, a lot of people say, you know, when you go through the hierarchy of nutrition, how can we ever go shopping listening to this guy? We have a Ways to Wellness natural recipe book, so we have all kinds of different foods, and then even the last section on transitional foods. And let me tell you what the fundamental trick is, though. Even secular people are telling you about God's plan when you go to the supermarket. Because what they're telling you is that you should be doing most of your shopping around the edges. You don't need to go in the aisles at all. Those Twinkie cupcakes will still be there 100 years from now. All those live foods, they don't last too long. And let me end on this last thing. There's a lot of questions there. But a lot of people, they talk about, well, what about frozen versus organic and all of that? Well, remember I said it's not what you eat, it's what you assimilate. It's eating right. Let me end off with this, because this is a question that comes up so often that I wanted to put up. And I like talking about hierarchies. I'll talk about hierarchy of healing tomorrow. But we're going to talk about hierarchy of nutrient preparations. It's cooked, you know, I remember I talked about, where does this fit in the scheme of things? So let's kind of end on this as an application now of how you can start applying this. And as I said, there's a lot more examples here. But the one that you get the highest nutrient content from is sprouts. Now, what's sprouts? You take those beans, right? Take those legumes, and guess what? You put them in water. It breaks down the enzyme. If you stop thinking about it, is inactive. If it was active, it would eat up the food before you got it. That's what's nice about fruit and vegetables. It's so efficient, it will eat up itself. When you start getting to the grains and legumes, you see how you start learning more and more about the power of this? So when you take those grains or those legumes and it sprouts them, it activates them. It reactivates that enzyme, and then it's much more bioavailable, biogenic. It builds the body as opposed to tear down the body. And then fresh raw food, look at it, 70% plus goes to the cellular level. Isn't that nice? Raw food, 30 plus. You say, well, how come raw food is so good? How come you don't get 100%? Why is that? Where's my third grader with common sense? Sometimes you got to be a third grader to really understand. What? Fiber! Thank you! You don't assimilate the fiber. But it does help you with your motility, right? So there's a purpose for it, but you don't get the full absorption. But how about juice? When you juice it, you get 90% plus. So juicing is very powerful. You'll see the cancer. I don't want to get too ahead of myself, because if I give you everything tonight, I don't need to hear this guy anymore. I heard it all. So I'm going to come back to this one. Dehydrated. What about that? A lot of people ask about that. 2 to 5% of the nutrient value is lost. Some of it you keep. A lot of well, what do you lose? You lose the water, don't you? Frozen. You lose 5 to 30%. Not too bad, though. People, you know, especially if it's as little as 5%. Steam, you lose a little bit more. Right? You start fractionating the food. And certain vitamins get destroyed after 102 degrees. Certain nutrients are broken down. You know, if I put you in a fire for 105 degrees, 110 degrees, how vital do you think you're going to be? You'll be broken up and not too functional. That's what happens to those nutrients when you overcook them. That's why it should be kind of lightly steamed. Okay, so you're starting to get it? Raw leftovers. You lose 20 to, even if it's raw. Once you cut it, you know, like a garlic, you processed it. Garlic is the best example. Garlic is a food that has an active enzyme in it called allinase. There's an ingredient called allicin, and when you cut it, that smell, that heat, that burning creates allicin, one of the most powerful antibiotics known to man. Kills more things than penicillin. But before you cut it, it's inactive. So raw food, once you start cutting it up and everything, understand this. You start to lose some of its nutritional integrity. Cooked, okay, lose 40 to 100%. We beat up that food so bad sometimes that sometimes you're better off eating the bag or the box it came in. You get more nutrient value than the food. And let me tell you why. And I mean that seriously. Because as we go through, cooked leftover, it might have started at 40%, but the leftovers, be very careful about how long you leave leftovers. Refrigerating, it helps a little bit. But microwave, 90% plus added toxins. Commercial can, 100% plus added toxins. See, all these boxed canned foods, fried foods, 100% plus added toxins. Food additives. So you can start to see now where that bottom part of the chart can be very, very problematic. Does this make sense? So this hierarchy can be very helpful in kind of understanding the practical application now of that hierarchy. And we'll go through a lot of examples like this. That's the reason why I brought this up. And it's a question that comes up a lot. So tomorrow we're going to talk about the relationship between diet and lifestyle and spirituality and children's health issues. God loves children. One of the things you're going to find out is he loves children of all ages. Even 100-year-old children. Because I'm going to be like a kid up there. I'm going to have my little knickers on and my high socks. Hopping up the track. So he loves all his children. So we're going to talk about children issues. So all of us count. We want to take care of our children, and we want to be a little bit more childlike ourselves. That's essentially it. That's what I wanted to cover for now. I think that's the end. Yes. I'm not going into a commercial on my school at all here. So that's it. That's fine. That's it. The most powerful system known to man. I hope you got a little bit of a sense of what that's all about. And boy, look at that. The Sabbath is coming in. You know what? One of the things that saved my life was the Sabbath. I used to work 7 days a week. I am so glad about the Sabbath. You come down and you rest. I remember when I was baptized, that's right about the time remember I said I left the IBM? That's when I was studying for my doctorate. Now, I was 48 years old when I was making the transition. And I was making a nice 6-figure salary. I wanted to get through that as quickly as I can. As a matter of fact, they gave me 3 to 5 years. I got my first doctorate in 9 months. But I remember when I learned about the Sabbath, I said, I'm not going to work on the Sabbath. It's amazing. Before that time, and I'm telling you from my personal experience, I used to do all this stuff, and the most productive time in my entire life was that period of time. I would take off and I was going through the material so quickly. It was a distance learning school. The reason why it took 9 months is in the mail delay. Isn't it? Aren't we blessed to have this Sabbath rest? Somebody talked about rest being one of those nutrients. You can eat the best food, get all the sunlight you want, all the water. If you don't get enough sleep, guess what? It does you no good at all. There are 2 functions. And this is perfect for the Sabbath. There's only 2 functions in life. They're called anabolic and catabolic. Anabolic builds you up. Catabolic tears you down. All activities, me running my mouth here, is taking up energy. I see your hook. He's going to pull me off because he wants to save me for the Sabbath too. But all of that, talking and blinking and even eyeglasses, bending the light, all of that takes a tearing you down. Building up only takes place during the resting phase. So I can work out all I want. And one of the smartest things I learned is when I first started, I was working out 5 days a week. I don't work out more than 2 or 3 days a week now. That rest and recovery only takes place, the building up of the muscle and the vitality only during the resting phase. Powerful. So as we come to the Sabbath, gracious Father, we praise you, we glorify your name, we thank you so much for your blessings. We thank you for all of the blessings that we never acknowledge, but we know that you're the great God out there that always loves us and always taking care of us. We're coming to you now, just acknowledging your power, your greatness. And even further, we're submitting ourselves to you anew, asking you to be with us during this entire series, working with us not only corporately but individually, so that you speak to each one of our hearts. Let each person hear what you want them to hear. Use me as a servant to speak your words and not mine. And Father, I pray that you grant everyone here a blessed Sabbath rest, traveling mercies, and your continued blessings for all of the things that you have planned for them. And I'm confident that you will answer this prayer because we prayed in the very precious name of Jesus Christ, our Lord, our Savior, our very best friend, and the one and only loving and master healer. Amen. Thank you.